Inside of 10 minutes, everybody on High Street, from Union Depot to the courthouse, was running. A loud mumble began to gradually crystallize into the dread word, damn. The dam has broke. The fear was put into words by a little old lady in an electric, or by a traffic cop, or by a small boy. Nobody knows who, nor does it now really matter. 2,000 people were abruptly in full flight. Go east was the cry. East, away from the river, east to safety. Go east, go east, go east. Black streams of people flowed eastward down all the streets leading in that direction. These streams, whose headwaters were in the dry goods stores, office buildings, harness shops, movie theaters. They were fed by trickles of housewives and children, cripples, servants, cats and dogs, slipping out of the houses past which the main streams flowed, shouting and screaming. When grandfather regained full consciousness at Parsons Avenue, he turned upon the retreating mob like a vengeful prophet. And he exhorted the men to form ranks. Stand off the rebel dogs. But at length, he too got the idea that the dam had broken. And roaring, "Go east," in his powerful voice, he caught up in one arm a small child, and in the other, a slight clerkish man of perhaps 42. And we began to slowly gain on those ahead of us. A scattering of firemen, policemen, and army officers in their dress uniforms. Oh, there had been a review up at Fort Hayes in the northern end of town. Added color to the surging billows of people. "Go east!" cried a child in a piping voice as she ran past a porch on which drowsed a lieutenant colonel of infantry. Used to quick decisions, trained to immediate obedience, the officer bounded off the porch and, running at full tilt, soon passed the child, bawling, "Go east!" The two of them emptied rapidly the houses on the little street they were on. "What is it? What is it?" demanded a fat, waddling man who intercepted the colonel. The officer dropped behind and asked the little child what it was. "The dam is broke," gasped the girl. "The dam is broke," roared the colonel. "Go east! Go east! Go east!" He was soon leading, with the exhausted child in his arms, a fleeing company of 300 persons who had gathered around him from living rooms, shops, garages, backyards, and basements. You know, nobody has ever been able to compute with any exactness how many people took part in this great rout of 1913. For the panic, which extended from the Winslow Bottling Works in the South End all the way to Clintonville, 6 miles north, it ended as abruptly as it started. Now, bobtail and ragtag and velvet-gowned groups of refugees melted away and slunk home, leaving the streets peaceful and deserted. The shouting, weeping, tangled evacuation of the city lasted not more than 2 hours in all. Some few people got as far east as Reynoldsburg, 12 miles away. 50 or more reached the country club, that was 8 miles away. Most of the others gave up, exhausted, or they climbed the trees in Franklin Park, 4 miles out. Order was restored and fear dispelled, finally, by means of militiamen riding about in motor lorries, bawling through megaphones, "The dam has not broken." Well, at first, this tended to only add to the confusion and increase the panic, for many stampeders thought the soldiers were bellowing, "The dam has now broken," thus setting an official seal of authentication on the calamity. All the time, the sun shone quietly, and there was nowhere any sign of oncoming waters. A visitor in an airplane, looking down on the straggling, agitated masses of people, would have been hard put to it to divine a reason for the phenomenon. Well, it must have inspired in such an observer a peculiar kind of terror, like the sight of the Marie Celeste, abandoned at sea, its galley fires peacefully burning its tranquil decks, bright in the sunlight. An aunt of mine, Aunt Edith Taylor, was in a movie theater on High Street when over and above the sound of the piano in the pit, oh, it was a W.S. Hart silent picture was being shown. There rose the steadily increasing trom of running feet. An elderly man sitting near my aunt mumbled something, got up out of his seat, and went up the aisle at a dog trot. This started everybody. In an instant, the audience was jamming the aisles. "Fire!" shouted a woman who always expected to be burned up in the theater. But the shouts outside were louder and coherent. "The dam is broke!" cried somebody. "Go east!" shouted a small woman in front of my aunt. And east they went, shoving and pushing and clawing, knocking women and children down, emerging finally into the street, torn and sprawling. Inside the theater, Bill Hart was on screen calmly calling some desperado's bluff, and the brave girl at the piano played "Row, row, row" loudly. And then, in my harem, outside, men were screaming across the State House lawn. Others were climbing trees. A woman managed to get up onto the "These Are My Jewels" statue right there in front of the State House, whose bronze figures of Sherman, Stanton, Grant, and Sheridan watched with cold unconcern the going to pieces of the capital city. Well, Aunt Edith wrote her account in a letter to me. She goes on, "I went south to State Street," which is actually right up here, "east on State to 3rd, south on 3rd Street to town, and then out east on town." A tall, spare woman with grim eyes and a determined chin ran past me down the middle of the street. I was still uncertain as to what was the matter, in spite of all the shouting. I drew up alongside the woman with some effort because, although she was in her late 50s, she had a beautiful, easy running form, and she seemed to be in excellent condition. "What is it?" I puffed. She gave me a quick glance, then looked ahead again, stepping up her pace a trifle. "Don't ask me, ask God." Aunt Edith continued, "When I reached Grant Avenue, I was so spent that Dr. H.R. Mallory," you remember Dr. Mallory, the man with the white beard who looked so much like Robert Browning? Well, Dr. Mallory, whom I had drawn away from at the corner of 5th in town, he passed me. "It's got us!" he shouted, and I felt sure that whatever it was did have us. For you know what conviction Dr. Mallory's statements always carried. I didn't know at the time what he meant, but found out later there was a boy behind him on roller skates, and Dr. Mallory mistook the swishing of the skates for the sounds of rushing water.